Dodson, the Florida Bike Guy. So have you thought about renting an e-scooter? I want to suggest reasons why you might think again. I know my audience is largely in the cycling community, but I'm finding a lot of people in our audience are going to Tampa and some of the other communities that have e-scooters. Your friends, your kids, your grandkids are tempted to ride these things. I want to just raise your awareness for a minute here today about exactly what you're getting into, because I find that people they never think anything is going to go wrong. And everybody who calls my office and every other injury lawyer in the state never thought anything was going to go wrong in their situation as well. You know, it's been months now since the city of Tampa approved these e-scooters, and we have 4 different manufacturers of them over in the Tampa area. And they're literally quite everywhere. My daughter lives over there in Hyde Park, and I've seen these things everywhere. They lived in San Francisco, and they had them all over the city there. People were dumping in them dumpsters because what's happening in these, people rent them. They're dockless, they're electric. They leave them parked on the sidewalk. They really became kind of a nuisance out there. My concern, however, is really for people riding them with not an appreciation for the danger that they represent. So those of us in the bike world understand that when I ride a bike, I ride with highly reflective clothing. I have a helmet on. And, you know, these e-scooters are being rented by the vast majority of people who do not wear a helmet. They're wearing whatever they have on at the time they hop on the scooter, from flip-flops to shorts to bathing suits. And they're riding them all over the city. You know, Florida has passed a law that you can ride them legally on the sidewalk, and you can ride them legally in the bike lane. And I think they're one of the last things we need to see in a bike lane, quite frankly, because people riding them are unpredictable and untrained. And I don't think they're compatible, quite frankly, with the bike lane. And I don't think they're very compatible with sidewalks as well. One of the things that we did was we went to the tutorial for one of the e-scooter manufacturers that are over in the Tampa area, and just looked at what information do they give you when you put your credit card in and you rent one of these things. Now I'm talking about these little scooters that stand upright. They look like a skateboard with a handlebar, and you stand there and you steer them. When you put your credit card information in there, there is an app that you've got to say that you agree and sign on to their rules and recommendations. But really what they're doing, the only thing they're doing is telling you you're liable for the scooter. You're liable for the harm that it does. You're liable for your own injuries. You're liable for your own tickets. You're liable for anything that happens when you're renting it. The one that we went to had virtually no information on how to ride it safely. They had a statement that they recommend wearing a helmet. When you go to a tutorial on how to ride it, there's no video, there was no demonstration. They had a photograph or an image of someone standing there on the scooter. So we're finding that people without any experience are getting on and using them. They act as though they're benign and really not a threat to anyone or to themselves. And I'm going to share you some data about how that's really not true. There was a situation in Tampa reported on in the press where a gentleman was riding one of these e-scooters, and he came close to the curb, and his foot caught the curb as he went by and twisted his foot around so that it ended up with a fracture of the tibia and fibula in that right leg. He had a $100,000 medical bill and no insurance. There was a death in Tampa when a rider on an e-scooter went into the path of a truck. Austin, Texas had these things out there in late 2017. They published a study based on just 3 months worth of data on e-scooter usage in the city of Austin. Is quite telling. They had 271 injuries in 90 days. Half of the injuries they described as being serious, which means a bone fracture, nerve, tendon, ligament injury, severe bleeding. Half the injuries had a relation to a head injury, because only one person out of 200 are actually wearing a helmet at the time that they were injured on one of these things. 55% of the injuries in the Austin study occurred when the scooter was in the street, and a third of the injuries occurred on the sidewalks. And a third of the riders on an e-scooter reported that they were injured on their first ride. Okay. 70% said they had received some training before they were injured, but 60% of those people said it was simply the app on the e-scooter provided by the e-scooter at the time they rented it. So I think the bottom line of these things is people believe that they're really kind of a cute, harmless toy. I've seen people in Tampa, just in my daughter's neighborhood, where you have to be an adult to rent them. But I've seen kids riding them. I've seen parents riding in the streets over there. A parent on this thing with a child standing between their legs, actually operating the handlebars. Nobody has a helmet on. They're riding in the street. They're riding from the sidewalk into the street, across the streets. I mean, I think they're a disaster. And I feel badly because I think people don't believe what the negative consequences can be from riding them. They just seem so fun. They occupy a strange place in the transportation mix because some of the planners seem to like them because they offer this last mile. Transportation planners are always trying to figure out where roads are going to go and infrastructure is going to go. And when you take a train from one place to another, or a boat or a ferry, the e-scooter sort of fits into the last mile of the trip. So they can get on this e-scooter and ride it. I've seen articles in the Tampa paper. Carrie, I appreciate your comment that they are a disaster. I've seen people in the Tampa market talk that they take the ferry or the bus and they get an e-scooter and they ride the last mile to their office in downtown Tampa. And I think there's a lot of people actually using that way. I think most people tend to be on them just scooting around for fun and pleasure. So, my mission is to raise awareness for things that people haven't maybe considered. I'm in a unique position because we see people when things go wrong, and we see the consequences of people who thought that would never happen to them. Remember that when you rent one of these e-scooters, you have to look, are you getting insurance? There's no provision on the ones that I've seen that you get any insurance. Matter of fact, they're making you be liable for the insurance issues. They're disclaiming any liability for them. We had a case on a similar situation down in Key West, where our client was walking across the street in a crosswalk, and was hit by an motor scooter, one of the little bigger ones, and ended up with a fractured hip. Well, the driver of the scooter was a 21-year-old kid. He wasn't a homeowner. He had no liability insurance on that scooter. The people that rented it to him provided no liability insurance on the scooter. There was no insurance. He ran over this lady in the crosswalk. She was totally in the right, and there was not anyone to bring a claim because the claim was against this 21-year-old kid who had no assets and very little income. So let me look at your comment here, Carrie. Yeah, Carrie's pointing out, this is a great comment. I appreciate you giving us that, how these things take over the trails and take over the bike lane. And my comment before was the people riding them don't really understand what their responsibilities are in bike lane in terms of stopping and changing direction and all the things that we rely on people to do with some predictability. The other thing about these things, the wheels on them are very, very small. It doesn't take much to upset them. A rock or a pebble is enough to throw you off of them. If you look at them, they have taillights, but you've got to look very carefully to see that taillight blinking. They're really not very well lighted up in my view. So I don't want to be Mr. Negative, but I want people to understand. I was chatting with a friend of mine recently whose daughter goes to school in New York City. And she told me that they had rented e-scooters in Manhattan. I'm like, seriously? I don't know. I can't imagine. So that's what I wanted to chat with you about this morning. Be careful, be heads up, understand that you're renting these things at your peril. I've got a free resource for you this morning. If you don't understand uninsured motorists, it's one of our most popular books. It's something that everybody needs to understand. I continue to get calls from cyclists who don't have adequate uninsured motorists on their policy. I could tell you story after story of people that wish they had it when they get into their first bike crash. And so get this resource, look at it, check your policy, and make sure you've got at least $100,000 in I really recommend $250,000. So we always appreciate your referrals. Remember that me and my team will take care of anyone you refer. And we appreciate and respect your willingness and ability to refer work to us. So be safe out there. I look forward to seeing you the next time. If you have a topic for us for a program, let us know. I'm Jim Dodson, the Florida Bike Guy. Thanks so much.